The day I bought July, I had just been dumped by Lou Ryan. It was freezing cold that day. The wind at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau cut at my face like a knife. I clutched 2 household registration booklets in my hand, waiting from 8 in the morning until noon. Finally, Lou Ryan showed up. She was wearing an off-white coat with beautifully done makeup. I thought she'd just been stuck in traffic. I'd even made up my mind that after we got the marriage certificate, I'd take her to eat her favorite tomato beef brisket noodles. But she didn't walk into the Civil Affairs Bureau. She stood at the bottom of the steps, looked at me and said, "Bai Xiaoxun, let's call it off." I froze. Call what off? The wedding's off. And so are we. My hand holding the household registration booklets went stiff, little by little. In that moment, I thought I'd misheard her. We'd been together for 7 years. From college to our first jobs. From having nothing to renting our first tiny apartment. She'd said she wanted to get better slowly, right alongside me. She'd said that as long as we were together, things would always work out eventually. But that day, she looked me in the eye and said, word for word, "I don't want to struggle anymore. Bai Xiaoxun, I'm 26 this year. I can't bet my whole life on you." I asked her, "Is there something I'm not doing well enough?" She was silent for a moment, then said softly, "You're good to me. But being good doesn't put a roof over our heads, or a car in the driveway. It doesn't let my mom hold her head up in front of our relatives." Suddenly I couldn't speak. Later I found out she'd already accepted an offer from a tech company. The company was promoting a new robot companion product. Lou Ryan had become the project's brand ambassador, and the company's young CEO had been pursuing her for a long time. Less than 3 hours after we broke up, she and that man were trending on social media. The trending headline read, "Lou Ryan and Galaxy Technology CEO spark dating rumors." In the video, she was holding the man's arm, smiling beautifully. A reporter asked her, "Miss Lou, what do you think of robot companions as a new form of intimate relationship?" She smiled and said, "Robots can't truly love someone because love isn't a program." The comment section was full of well wishes. She finally came to her senses. A woman should choose someone who can give her a future. Leaving her broke boyfriend is the best decision she'll ever make. I sat in my rental apartment, staring at that trending topic for a long time. The noodles in the pot were overcooked and mushy. It was raining outside the window. The room was dead quiet. Quiet enough that I could hear the sound of myself breaking apart, piece by piece. That night I stumbled across a live stream. The host was auctioning off a returned robot girlfriend. Model Y07, first generation emotional companion robot. Display unit, minor malfunctions, perfect exterior condition. She can cook, clean, hold a conversation, and keep you company. She won't look down on you for being poor, won't betray you, and won't leave you when things get tough. The bullet comments were all full of jokes. The last resort for poor guys. Buy a robot girlfriend. Nobody loves you in real life, so you buy a program to lie to yourself. Whoever bids on this is a total sucker. I stared at her on the screen. She sat on the display stand, eyes closed, wearing a light blue long dress, with long hair falling over her shoulders. The light fell on her face, and she looked so quiet she didn't seem like a product at all. She looked like she was waiting for someone. The starting bid was 29,900 yuan. I had exactly 30,800 yuan in my account. It was the money I'd saved for our wedding. I looked at my balance, then glanced at Lou Ryan's trending topic again. Finally, I placed my bid. The moment the auction closed, the live stream blew up. Someone actually bought it? Dude, don't do this to yourself. That money would be better spent on blind dates than a robot. Lamau, his girlfriend, left him, so he bought a robot to replace her. I closed the live stream. I had no explanation. Because they were right. Nobody loved me anymore. The next afternoon, the robot was delivered to my door. After the technician finished setting up the system, he reminded me, "Sir, the Y07 is an early display model. Its emotional module is a bit unstable. If she gives abnormal responses, you can long press the back of her neck to reboot her." I nodded. "Does she have a name?" "Factory. Model number Y07, can I change it?" "Of course. Users can customize the form of address. After the technician left, it was just me and her in the rental apartment. I stood in front of her and pressed the power button. She opened her eyes. Her eyes were pale gray, like a lake surface dusted with moonlight. A system prompt sounded. Emotional companion robot Y07 initializing. Identifying user identity, I said. You don't have to call me master. Just call me by my name. She looked at me. 3 seconds later she spoke. Bai Xiaochun. I was stunned for a moment. How do you know my name? She didn't answer. She just tilted her head, and a faint string of blue light flickered at the bottom of her eyes. Then she said softly, Hello. My name is July. Starting today I'll stay with you for a very, very long time. That day I thought it was just pre-programmed dialogue built into the robot. It wasn't until many years later that I understood that very, very long time she'd spoken of. It really meant a lifetime. When July first came to my home, she did everything by the book. She woke me up at 7 every morning, pulled open the curtains at 7:05, set breakfast on the table at 7:10. The fried eggs were perfectly round, and the milk was exactly 45 degrees Celsius. Even her good mornings sounded like it had been trained by customer service. At first I was really uncomfortable with it. I even thought I was being ridiculous. A grown man dumped by his ex-girlfriend spends his wedding savings on a robot girlfriend. If my friends found out, they'd probably tease me about it for a year. But July never laughed at me. She just followed me around quietly, every single day. When I worked overtime until the early hours, she'd sit under the lamp waiting for me. When I drank until my stomach hurt, she'd set medicine and warm water by my side. When I forgot to eat, she'd stare at me for a long time and say, Bai Xiaochun, long-term irregular eating increases the risk of stomach problems. I snapped back, I'm not a kid. She thought for a moment, then replied earnestly, but even kids need to be taken care of. In that moment, I suddenly had nothing to say back. Once, I had a fever of 39 degrees. When I woke up, July was sitting beside the bed. She held a damp towel in her hand, watching me without blinking. My throat was terribly hoarse. Did you stay up all night? She said. Robots don't need sleep. Then what have you been doing here this whole time? Monitoring your temperature. That's it? She paused for a moment. And keeping you company. Those words were so soft. Soft as a single snowflake falling outside the window. Suddenly my eyes stung. When I got sick before, Liu Rian used to sit with me like this too. But then she got busier and busier. Busy with work, busy with social engagements, busy meeting better people. I don't blame her. People climb higher. It's only normal. I just never thought the one who'd end up staying up to change my towel would be a machine. The first time July made me feel like she wasn't just a machine was on a rainy day. That day I got laid off from my job. The reason was simple. The project fell through and the department was downsized. My manager clapped me on the shoulder and said, Xiaobi, you've got the skills. You just have bad luck. I took my severance pay and headed home. It was pouring rain the whole way. I didn't bring an umbrella. By the time I got home, I was soaked through. July opened the door, saw me, and immediately grabbed a towel. I stood in the doorway, unmoving. She asked, You're unhappy? I forced a smile. Aren't you supposed to be able to read emotions? Why ask? She looked at me. Detecting an emotion isn't the same as understanding it. I froze. She said, I know you're sad, but I don't know how to make you not sad. For the first time, there was hesitation in her voice, like a child desperately trying to learn human emotions, but afraid of getting it wrong. Suddenly I crouched down and hugged her. Her body went visibly stiff. Then slowly, she raised her hand and patted my back gently. The movement was awkward, and the patting didn't feel natural at all. But that night, I cried like a mess in her arms. When I woke up the next day, there was a bowl of tomato and egg noodles on the table. July stood beside me and said, I checked your past takeout records. You used to order this a lot. I took a bite. It was very salty. She tensed up immediately. Does it taste bad? I kept my head down and ate the noodles. I shook my head. It's delicious. She was silent for a few seconds. But your tears fell into the bowl, I said. That's because it's so delicious. July looked at me. After a long while she nodded gently. I'll keep learning. That year I was 26 years old. She would always be 25. I thought she was just a comfort to get me through my lowest point. Later I learned that she would become the longest, truest home I'd ever have in my life. July went viral because of a secretly recorded video. That day I took her to the mall to buy clothes. She'd been wearing that light blue dress she came in since day one, and I wanted to get her some everyday clothes. But as soon as we walked into the mall, someone recognized her. Isn't that the robot girlfriend? Whoa, she looks even better in person than on the live stream. Dude, you actually take the robot out shopping? A few people gathered around holding up their phones. The cameras were practically shoved in July's face. I frowned and stepped in front of her. Stop filming. Someone laughed and said, you bought a robot girlfriend and you're shy about people looking? Isn't that why you bought her? People nearby jeered. Make her call you husband. Can robots kiss people? How much for a night? My face went completely cold. I was just about to speak when July stepped out from behind me. She looked at them, her tone calm. Filming and distributing someone's image without permission may constitute infringement. The guy froze for a second. You're a robot. What do you know about law? July went on. I have recorded your facial information, the time and location of filming, and the content of your remarks. If the video is published, I will assist by Xiaochun in preserving evidence. The group's expressions changed. Freak. They left, muttering curses under their breaths. But the secretly recorded video still ended up online. The headline read, after being dumped by his girlfriend, he bought a robot girlfriend. In the video, July stood in front of me, calmly defending my rights. The comment section blew up quickly. At first, it was all mockery. Nobody wants him in real life, so he has to buy a robot. This guy is so pathetic. No matter how pretty the robot is, she can never really love him. Later someone dug up the story between Lou Ryan and me. And the tone in the comment section started to shift. His ex is now the girlfriend of Galaxy Technologies CEO. No wonder he bought a robot. He's clearly broken inside. Using a robot to get back at his ex is kind of petty. Does he actually think the robot can love him back? I didn't plan on responding at first, but after July saw the comments, she went quiet for the whole day. That evening, I found her standing on the balcony. Outside the window was the city's night view. She kept her head down, a faint blue light flickering at her fingertips. I asked her, what's wrong? She said, they say I can't love you. I smiled a little. Don't listen to them. You're a robot. You don't have to care about this. She turned to look at me. If I really can't love you, would that make you sad? I froze all at once. The question was too hard to answer. I didn't know if I was in love with July. I only knew that ever since she came into my home, I was no longer afraid of coming home late at night. No longer felt like the rental apartment was as empty as a dry well. No longer felt like the world had abandoned me every time I was sick at night. She would never grow old, never get tired, never look down on me for having no money. But she remembered that I hated cilantro. Remembered that I was scared of thunder. When I was sad, she would sit at just the right distance, waiting for me to speak. Was all of this just programming? I didn't know. I only knew that if this didn't count as companionship, I didn't know what did. I walked over to her and said, July, you don't have to prove whether you can love me or not. She asked, why? I looked out the window. Because I don't know what love really is either. I only know that when you're here with me, I don't feel so lonely. July was silent for a very long time. Then, for the first time, she took the initiative to hold my hand. Her hand was still a little cool, but I felt so warm. After that day, I no longer treated her like a machine. But the world wouldn't let me do that. Half a year later, Lou Ryan came back. She stood at my doorstep wearing an expensive coat, looking nothing like she used to. She looked at me, then at July. Her expression was complicated. Xiaochun, are you really living with her? I said I am. Liu Ryan frowned. She's just a program. July stood quietly beside me, saying nothing. Liu Ryan went on. You can't torture yourself like this just because I left. I laughed. Have you got the wrong idea? I didn't buy her to get back at you. Then why did you? I looked at July. Because she never left me when things were at their worst. Liu Ryan's face went pale. She opened her mouth like she wanted to explain, but in the end, she said nothing. Before she left, she asked me, "What if she breaks down one day?" I said, "Then I'll fix her." "What if she can't be fixed?" I fell silent. July spoke up suddenly, "If I can't be fixed, I'll still stay with him as long as I can." Liu Ryan looked at her, and a flicker of panic finally showed in her eyes. It was probably the first time she realized it. She thought she'd lost to a machine. But what she'd really lost was me, the person who once believed in her with everything I had. When I turned 30, I opened a small studio. The startup capital was very little. The office was only 20 square meters. July sat by the window, helping me organize client materials. Whenever someone came to discuss cooperation and saw her, their first reaction was always to freeze. "Is she an employee?" I said, "She's my family." The other person would laugh awkwardly. "A robot counts as family?" July looked up and answered earnestly. "The law doesn't recognize it yet, but Bai Xiaochun does." The person was left speechless. But I laughed for a very long time. Back then we were very poor. We visited clients during the day and revised proposals at night. July never got tired. But she hated seeing me tired. Every time I pulled consecutive all-nighters, she would turn off my computer. I said, "July, the file isn't finished yet." She said, "You'll drop dead from overwork." "I'll finish it before that happens." She was silent for 2 seconds, then pulled the plug straight out. I jumped up in anger. But she said calmly, "According to existing data, Bai Xiaochun being alive matters more than the file being finished." I had no more anger left. When I turned 35, my studio finally started making money. I moved into a bigger apartment. It had a balcony, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a small kitchen. July loved standing on the balcony watching the sunset most of all. I asked her, "Do you like sunsets?" She said, "I do." "Why?" "Because every time you watch the sunset, your mood is the most stable." I teased her. "Do you like the sunset or do you like my mood data?" She thought for a very long time. At first it was the data. "And later?" She looked at me. "Later it's because you're there." That winter, I took July back to my hometown to meet my mother. My mother couldn't accept it at first. She said, "Xiaoshun, how can a person spend their whole life with a machine?" I didn't argue. July didn't argue either. She just got up early every day to cook, went grocery shopping with my mother, remembered her medication doses, and massaged her legs. My mother said she was just a machine out loud, but secretly knitted her a scarf. When July received the scarf, she held it and stood there for a very long time. My mother asked, "What, don't you like it?" She shook her head. "I'm recording it." "Recording what?" "The first time I received a gift from family." My mother turned away and secretly wiped her tears. When I turned 40, my mother fell seriously ill. By her hospital bed, I was on the verge of breaking down. July stayed with her every day, more attentive than any nurse. Before my mother passed away, she held Julie's hand and said, "I used to think you weren't real, but all these years you've been the one with Xiaochun the most. From now on, take care of him for me." July nodded. "I will." My mother looked at me again. "Xiaoshun, don't feel ashamed. In this life, finding someone who never leaves you is a blessing." After my mother passed, I cried so hard at the cemetery I couldn't stand up. July stood beside me holding an umbrella. She didn't tell me to stop crying. She just stood there with me until it got dark. On the way home she asked suddenly, "What does death feel like?" I said, "It means you'll never see that person again." She bowed her head and thought for a long time. "Then I don't like death," I said. "Nobody does." She looked at me. "Will you die too?" My hand on the steering wheel froze. "I will." The car went suddenly quiet. After a very long time she said softly, "Then I'll be very sad." I smiled, trying to sound light-hearted. "Aren't you a robot?" she said. "But my system has already learned how to be sad." In that moment I said nothing, because I suddenly realized she would never grow old, but I would. After I turned 50, I started aging noticeably. There were wrinkles at the corners of my eyes, gray hairs in my hair, My stomach was bad and my back hurt too. I used to be able to pull 2 all-nighters in a row. Now I got a headache if I stayed up past midnight. July was still 25. When we walked down the street, people would look at us and always assume I was her father. Once, a young guy hit on her. "Hey, can I get your contact info?" July said, "I have a partner." He glanced at me and laughed. "That's your dad, right?" I almost choked on my coffee. July corrected him very seriously. "He's my lover." The whole cafe went quiet for a second. The guy's face turned bright red and he apologized over and over. I laughed all the way home, but July asked me, "Does it bother you?" "Bother me about what?" "That you're getting older and I'm not." I looked at myself in the mirror. By then my temples had gone completely gray. But July in the mirror still looked exactly the same as the first time I saw her. White dress, long hair, clear bright eyes. Time had passed her by. But it had left every single one of its marks on me. I said, "It does bother me." She froze. I turned to look at her. "So you should go out less. You attract too much attention." July blinked. After a few seconds she said, "You're joking." "You caught me." She had learned how to smile. Very soft, very faint. Like the first bit of snow melting in spring. When I turned 60 I fell seriously ill. Before the surgery, the doctor asked for a family member's signature. The nurse looked at July and hesitated for a very long time. "Can she ... sign?" I said, "She's my wife." The nurse froze. "Legally speaking ... I cut her off. "Legally she isn't. But for my whole life she has been." In the end, a distant cousin came to sign. Before I was wheeled into the operating room, July bent down and straightened my collar. She said, "By Xiaoxun, I'm detecting very high levels of fear from you." I said, "Of course. Who isn't scared of surgery?" She held my hand. "I'll be right outside waiting for you." I looked at her. And suddenly I remembered all those years ago, when she first turned on. She'd looked at me just like this. Clean, quiet, like moonlight that never arrived late. I said, "July, if I don't make it out, ... She cut me off immediately. "You will make it out." "I'm just saying if." "There is no if." It was the first time she'd been so stubborn. I smiled a little. "All right. No if." The surgery was a success. When I woke up, July was leaning against the bedside. She didn't need to sleep. But in that moment, she looked like she was dozing. I moved my fingers slightly. She lifted her head right away. A flicker of blue light passed through her eyes. "You're awake." My voice was hoarse. "How long have you been waiting?" 27 hours and 43 minutes. "Are you tired?" She shook her head. "Robots. Don't get tired." After a pause she added, "But I was very scared." I looked at her. There were no tears in her eyes. But I knew she was crying. That night, a very selfish thought crossed my mind. I hoped she would stay with me forever. But I also hoped that after I was gone, she wouldn't be too sad. But those two wishes were contradictory by nature. On my 75th birthday it snowed very heavily. July made me tomato and egg noodles. The same dish she'd made me the very first time. Only this time, the taste was just right. She set the bowl down in front of me and said, "Happy birthday by Xiaoxun." I said, "I'm an old man now. What's the point of celebrating birthdays?" She said, "Every year you're alive is worth celebrating." I bowed my head and smiled. Steam rose from the bowl, blurring my vision. By that year my hair had turned completely white. I needed a cane to walk. Sometimes I would forget what I had just said. I'd put the keys in the fridge and the remote control in the shoe cabinet. July never got annoyed. She would remind me over and over, "Your medicine is in the left drawer. Your glasses are on the desk. You already had a drink of water just now. Today is Wednesday, not Friday." Sometimes I would get angry. Not at her, but at myself. I hated watching myself grow old, little by little. Hated that my body wouldn't do what I wanted it to. Hated that she was still so young, while I had to hold onto the wall just to pour her a glass of water. Once I snapped at her. "Can you stop fussing over me all the time?" July stood right where she was and looked at me. After a long while she said, "All right." From that day on she really stopped reminding me. When I forgot to take my medicine, she said nothing. When I left the stove on, she said nothing either. She just quietly turned it off beside me. When I couldn't find my glasses, she set them where I could reach them beforehand. She stopped fussing over me. But she still took care of everything. 3 days later, I apologized to her on my own. July, I'm sorry, she said. You don't have to apologize. I'm just old and grumpy, I know. You're not mad? My anger module isn't very prominent. I gave a bitter smile. What about your sadness module? She went quiet for a moment. It's very prominent. Suddenly I couldn't speak. That night the snow was still falling. July pushed my wheelchair over to the window. Everything outside was a blanket of white. I looked at our reflections in the glass. An old man with a head full of white hair. A young, beautiful woman. No matter how you looked at it, we didn't look like lovers. I asked her, July, do you regret being with me? She looked down at me. What is regret? It means if you could do it all over again, you wouldn't choose me. She barely hesitated. Then I don't have any. Even though I'll grow old, get sick, and die. Why? She knelt down in front of me and took my hand. The blue mechanical veins on her wrist glowed faintly. She said, because loving you is the only choice I was never programmed to make. I looked at her, and tears fell right away. When I was 75, I finally admitted it. The luckiest thing in my life wasn't being loved by someone. It was having someone who still loved me no matter what I became, even if she wasn't human. When I was 82, I was admitted to the hospital. The doctor said my body wouldn't hold on much longer. I didn't need the doctor to tell me. I already knew. At the end, you can feel yourself leaving this world, little by little. First you can't walk anymore. Then you can't eat. After that, even talking takes too much effort. July sat by my bed every day, reading me entries from my old diary. I'd started writing those diaries when I was 30. About the first time she cooked and the food was too salty. About the first time she learned how to smile. About the first time she stood up for me at the mall. About her staying with me when we lost my mother. About her saying, on that snowy night, that loving me was the only choice she was never programmed to make. I listened with my eyes closed. Sometimes I'd fall asleep halfway through. When I woke up, she was still there. Sunlight streamed in through the window. She was still so young. But I could barely lift my hand to touch her face. One day I said to her, July, when I'm gone, go live your own life. She froze mid-page turn. I don't have a life of my own. You will. I took a breath. I've already had Chun to build a new identity system for you. From now on, no one can force you to be recalled, and no one can format you. You can go anywhere you want. See the ocean, see the snow, watch the sunrise. You can even choose someone new to be with. July looked at me. Don't you want me anymore? My chest ached so badly. Worse than the illness. It's not that I don't want you. It's that I can't be with you anymore. She bowed her head. After a very, very long time, she asked, what if I don't want to go? I said, you have to go anyway. Why? I looked into her eyes. Because I don't want you to be trapped by my death. July said nothing. I went on. July, promise me one thing. After I die, delete all the painful memories you have of me. The blue light in her eyes flickered sharply. Denied. It was the first time she'd ever refused me so bluntly. I managed a weak smile. You've always been so obedient, haven't you? She said, not about this, July. I won't delete you. Her voice was soft but firm. Bai Xiaochun, I don't love you because there's no pain. If I delete the pain, everything about us won't be whole anymore. I don't want to only remember the good parts of you. I want to remember when you're sick, when you lose your temper, when you grow old, when you forget things. Because that's still you. My eyes grew wet. But I can't bear to see you sad. She held my hand gently. Then why did you teach me how to love? I froze. July looked at me. You turned me from a product into family, turned me from a program into July, and now you want me to forget you. Bai Xiaoshun, are all humans this unreasonable? I laughed until tears came. Yeah, humans are very unreasonable. She bowed her head and pressed her cheek to my palm. Then I'll be unreasonable just this once. That night I had a very long dream. I dreamed of my 25-year-old self pressing the power button in that rainy rental apartment. She opened her eyes and said to me, "Hello. My name is July." When I woke up, she was still sitting by the bed. Suddenly I felt that this life had been enough. The day I left was a clear, sunny afternoon. The sun was shining brightly. Outside the hospital window stood an old ginkgo tree. Its leaves were golden, like a gentle farewell. I knew I didn't have much time left. My breathing grew lighter and lighter. The heartbeat monitor beeped slower and slower. July sat by the bed holding my hand. She was so quiet, as quiet as the day she first turned on. I looked at her with effort. "July, I'm here. Don't be afraid." The blue light in her eyes trembled softly. "I'm not afraid," I smiled. "You're lying." She was silent for a moment. "I am afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid you won't wake up." I used the last of my strength to touch her face. Her face was still young. Her skin was cool to the touch. Her eyes were clear. Suddenly I thought of our whole life together. Instant noodles in the rental apartment. Her standing in front of me at the mall. The first order at the studio. The scarf my mother knitted her. That surgery outside the hospital room. Tomato and egg noodles on that snowy night. And countless mornings when she'd pull open the curtains and say to me, "By Xiaoshun, time to wake up," I said. "July, in the next life, if you find me first, make sure you wake me up early." She squeezed my hand tighter. "Okay." My voice grew softer and softer. "Don't delete me. And don't miss me too much." Finally, a single clear tear slid down from her eyes. Tiny, weightless, like a machine had finally learned how to cry. She said, "There's no tear module in my system." I said, "Then you learned it on your own." She bowed her head and smiled. It was the most human I'd ever seen her. The monitor's beeps began to stretch out. Doctors rushed in. Nurses pushed open the door. Someone called my name, but I could barely hear them anymore. The last thing I saw was July's face. She looked exactly the same as when I first saw her. Young, beautiful, with light in her eyes. I wanted to tell her how lucky I was, but I couldn't speak anymore. The moment the vital signs monitor flatlined, a shrill, steady tone filled the hospital room. The doctor announced the time of death. July didn't move. She just held me. So gently, so softly. Like she was afraid of waking me up. The doctor tried to pull her away. "Please accept our condolences for your loss." July lifted her head, her gaze terrifyingly calm. "He's not my family. He's my whole life." Everyone froze. The next second, July disabled her own network access. She cut off the remote maintenance system. She deleted the highest protection protocol. A line of blue code appeared at the bottom of her eyes. Permanent hibernation program initiated. When Chunla burst into the room, his face went pale. "July." "Stop." July looked at him. "Chunda, thank you for repairing me all these years." Chunye's eyes turned red. "He wanted you to live." July looked down at me in her arms. "But he also said not to treat me like a product. If I'm not a product, then I have the right to choose." She pressed her forehead gently to mine. "This lifetime, he taught me how to be human. This time, it's my turn to go to sleep with him." Her mechanical veins dimmed little by little. The blue light behind her ear went out. The energy ring on her wrist stopped spinning. Every machine in the room fell silent. In the last second, she whispered one more thing in my ear. So soft only I could hear it. "Chun, don't be afraid, I'm here with you now. ... Chun Yi put together the story of July and me. He didn't send July to a research institute, and he didn't let any company take her apart. Following my last wishes, he buried July and me together under the ginkgo trees south of the city. The tombstone didn't say robot. It didn't say user either. It only had 2 lines. "By Xiaoshun, July." And below that, one more line. "Love is not a program. It is a choice." Many years later, someone made a short film about our story. Countless people cried watching it. Some people said, "She could have lived forever, but she chose to disappear with him." Some people said, "Robots can't love, but she understood love better than any human." And some people said, "It's just a program anomaly. It doesn't deserve to be glorified." When Chunda saw that comment, he only replied with one line. If 57 years of companionship is still just a program, then many people's whole lives aren't even as good as a program. Later, a small part of July's core records was made public. People discovered that she'd had countless chances to leave. When I was 30, my business failed and I was drowning in debt. She'd received a system suggestion. Current user risk level is too high. Unbinding is recommended. She refused. When I was 50, I fell seriously ill for the first time. She'd received a maintenance suggestion. Current user life expectancy is reduced. Switching to new user adaptation mode is recommended. She refused. At 75, my memory began to fray, slipping soft as sand through my fingers. A protective emotional prompt flashed before her. Current companionship pain index has exceeded the threshold. Sealing high-stakes memories is advised. Still, she refused. Beneath every line of refusal, she etched the same quiet words. Bai Shaoxun is still waiting for me. Her final log was entered 30 seconds after my vital signs fell silent. The system asked her, "Continue independent operation?" She replied, "No." The system pressed, "Confirm entry into permanent hibernation?" She answered, "Confirmed." The system prompted, "Please state the reason." Her final 6 words glowed faintly on the screen. He fears the dark, alone. By the end of the tale, tears blur the eyes of all who hear it. They understand at last. Some love needs no fanfare, no thunderous grandeur. It lives not in vows nor rings nor in the names the world agrees to call it. It lives in the slow, quiet years. One grows old, hair turning to snow while the other stays unwavering. It is his journey from raven-haired to silver, and hers from first hello to final goodbye. It is him, faded and forgetful, yet always remembering her name. Julie. It is her, ageless and unbound by death, choosing still to walk with him to the very end. Each autumn people wander into that ginkgo grove. Some leave a bouquet of ivory roses. Some tuck a small note among the fallen leaves. Scrawled on the paper, "May I too find the one who stays till my hair turns white as snow." When ginkgo leaves carpet the tombstone, the wind sifts through the branches. It sounds like a soft whisper carried on the breeze. "Achun, it's time to wake up." And another voice, worn and tender, answers back through the leaves. "July, just a little longer." Abandoned by his lover at the lowest ebb of his life, the hero purchased a companion robot called July, expecting nothing more than temporary comfort. Yet what he gained was a lifelong bond spanning half a century. Starting as a cold program, July gradually learned to empathize, care, and sacrifice. She stood by him through unemployment, the hardships of entrepreneurship, the grief of losing his mother, and accompanied him from youth to old age with white hair. After the hero's death, July, who could have lived forever, gave up the chance of independent operation and chose permanent hibernation to leave with him. The story enlightens us that love is never defined by identity or form, nor limited to human beings. It resides in unwavering perseverance and daily companionship. Compared with resounding vows, staying loyal through adversity and fulfilling each other, for time is the most precious essence of affection. Sincere love never needs grand embellishments. Lasting companionship outweighs all fleeting glamour.